Welcome to You've Got This with Sarah Hamaker, a podcast to encourage and equip moms along their parenting journey. Join Sarah each week as she interviews dads and moms like you and discusses the joys, challenges, and rewards of raising kids.
And hi, welcome to You've Got This. I'm Sarah Hamaker, and I'm thrilled to have Elizabeth Spencer as a guest on my show today. She is a mom to two teenage daughters, and she blogs Guilty Chocoholic Mama. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Hello. Good morning.
So we're just going to have a conversation here today, and we both have teenagers.
Yay.
I have two teenage daughters. I know. Isn't that great? And I often get those sympathetic glances when I say I have teenagers. And when I say those teenagers are girls, I get the grimaces along with the sympathetic glances.
Yep.
And when I say that my teenage daughters are great, and they are, I get those looks of disbelief like I'm delusional or haven't had my morning cup of tea or something.
Right.
And I know you've experienced those same reactions because we've talked about that in the past. So, but why do you think teenagers, especially girls, get such a bad rap? I mean, why all the angst about having teenagers in general and girls in particular?
Well, I mean, there is, like with most things, there's some underlying truth to that. And so, I mean, having teenagers is hard. Like having any child is hard. And girls come kind of with their own package. We refer to ours as the house of hormones, and so there is no getting around the fact that plays into it. But I think there's a lot of fear, and people only hear usually the negative stories sometimes, and so, or maybe they remember what they were like when they were teenagers, and so they feel like that's what's coming for them. But I just feel like that's what kind of gets the press more, and that there's just not as much conversation about the good things about having teenagers, and so that's kind of one thing that I've tried to do a little bit in my writing and just general conversations is to put the good stuff out there so that people will know that they have things to look forward to and that they shouldn't just fear the teenage years, and especially with teenage daughters because, again, like yours, I think mine are wonderful. Not all the time, but none of us is wonderful all the time. So,
right, and when you mentioned, I know about thinking about to our own teenage years. And sometimes I think about that, and I want to call my mom and say, I'm so sorry,
yes.
I was a brat.
Yes.
Do you get that kind of...
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Mom, for putting up with me. I really, we value our moms so much more since we became moms anyway. But then it helps, too, because I try to... remember how it felt to be a teenage girl because at least I have that background. And so to try and remember what they're going through and give them the benefit of the doubt sometimes if they're having kind of a mood thing. And a lot of the time I'm finding what giving them the benefit of the doubt looks like is just not saying anything.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
I so often... when my girls have a kind of snarky comment, and let's face it, teenagers can be snarky, and I was a snarky, terrible teenager. I was terribly sarcastic. I look back and I think, why didn't someone muzzle me my whole teenage years? I mean, I know I was bad.
I
mean, even kind of knew it then, but, as teenagers, I was like, well, and so when my girls start saying some of those things, when they start getting a little snarky, I mean, isn't it? I think we have the power, especially as moms,
yes.
to escalate stuff.
Yep.
And to, kind of bring stuff down.
Yes. For sure.
And I think what we've forgotten is that we especially as Christian moms, we so want our girls and our boys too, but we're talking about girls here.
Right.
Our girls to to choose the right thing and to be kind and to be kind to their sister and all those kind of things that we come down pretty hard on them anytime they make a remark that's, not kind or snarky or sarcastic or, and I know that for me, I've been trying harder these days to bite my tongue and to kind of let the remarks go. But that's hard. Yeah. How do you keep that inside of you?
Well, I mean, God is faithful, and He's the perfect parent, so He's good to guide or whatever. And so I remember an incident last year when I was in the kitchen in the morning, and I was getting around, and my older teenager, who's now a college student, but I could hear her upstairs, and I could just hear by the footfalls that I was hearing on the floor above me that she was not having a great start to her day, and that she was going to probably come down in a mood. And I literally started to think, you know what, when she comes down here, I'm going to give her what she's given me, because this girl has this charmed existence. She's loved, she's safe, she's generally happy, she has all these good things, and she's having this mood, and so, oh boy, am I going to give this back to her. And that will make a point, and that will help things. And then it was kind of like God was like, yeah, not a great idea. So I just felt like I heard Him say, don't give what you're getting, and don't feed that fire, and just be quiet, basically.
Yeah.
And give her what you want to get, and try and feed the fire of love a little bit more. So all that really looked like when she came downstairs was what I just said was, good morning, sweetheart, even though it was very obvious that she was not having a good morning. Mm-hmm. But I just said, good morning, and then I just didn't say anything else for a while. I just went about my thing and let her go about her thing, and I think at one point I asked her, can I give you a hug? And she let me give her a hug, and then eventually she kind of leaned into it a little bit. And then she went about her deal or whatever, and then when she was on the way out the door, she said, I'm sorry I was in a bad mood earlier. Thanks for, being patient with me or whatever, which was kind of like, one of those.
I know. Triumph.
Yeah, and so that has just stuck with me a little bit, and so you can always say something, but unsaying it is so much harder. And so even like last week, my younger daughter, who's a high school sophomore, and she's very busy. She's got a full load at school. She's in dance 3 nights a week, taking and teaching classes, and she's in marching band. So she has a lot going on. And she was having a mood and was getting a little freaked out or whatever. And I started to say, well, you can just get rid of dance. It's an optional activity. It doesn't have to happen in your life.
Right.
And then it was like, you don't need to say that right now. That's not going to help this situation. And so I didn't say it. And another time it came up, and I didn't say it, and just let her process through. So there again, I can say something later, but if I say it right then, unsaying it is going to be impossible, and it's just going to feed the wrong kind of fire, I guess.
Right. Exactly. I think we forget how much our response to kids, and especially to teenagers, can really escalate stuff or calm stuff down. Definitely. And I think this also comes to another topic I wanted to talk to you about, was that sometimes I think we get lulled into thinking our teenagers don't need us as much as they did when they were toddlers, and we were just trying to keep them alive from, dawn to dusk.
Right.
I don't know how many times. Yeah, then I call my husband would call me at work, and I had 2 or 3 kids at home, and they're all little, and he's like, how's your day? And I'm like, well, everyone's still alive.
Right.
And that was, to me, a good day.
Right.
But in talking about, our teenagers and their moods and all the things, they really still need us. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think your teenagers still need from you? What is it that, because we don't need to feed them, we don't need to clothe them. They can do a lot of those things themselves, but there is still stuff that they need from us.
Yeah, I think they need us to be their safe place, that they can depend on us to be to be a refuge sometimes, and they need to know that we're going to be there and we're going to be available, and we're going to just kind of be that focal point, that steadying point or whatever. And so not that we just put up with everything and not that we let them run over us or whatever, but I think they need to know that we're on their side and we're in their corner, and that we are not going to bail on them, and that we're not going to overreact to every little thing. In fact, sometimes both the girls, when they start to talk to me, they'll actually preface it by saying, "Now, I don't want this to turn into a whole thing," and then they'll go from there. And I'm usually like, okay, and they're saying that, for my benefit. But it's just that sort of constancy that they know, okay, Mom is there for me, and she's not going to freak out over every little thing, and I can reach out to her, and I can talk to her, and it's less caring for their physical needs now, and more caring for their mental and emotional needs, and for sure that's it with girls. So, yeah, you hear people, a lot of times saying, "Oh, I'm so worried about when my kids get older and they don't need me anymore," and I'm thinking, I don't know, that hasn't happened for me yet, and I still need my mom. So it shifts away from trying to keep them alive and trying to clothe them and feed them, and it shifts to things that have more to do with their minds and their hearts and their souls, which a lot of days feels a lot heavier, but a huge opportunity for us, I think.
Right, and I think part of that caring for them is those little things that we do for them that they can do for themselves.
Yep.
Now, I'm a big proponent of helping, not tying my child's shoes because, he can tie them himself. And there's those things that they need to learn to do for themselves. But there's also things that I call it kind of our mom love, how we show them. For me, it's my girls have long hair, and it's braiding their hair in the mornings.
Right.
And they can do this.
Right.
I could have said, you're old enough, you need to learn to do this yourself, it's your hair. And that would have been fine.
Right.
But I've just found that to be kind of a sweet time. I can kind of gauge their mood for the day, and by how they react to drawing the brush through their hair. If it's like, "Mom, you're trying to kill me," I'm like, okay, I need to maybe pray for them a little bit more, and to be a little more gentle in my even normal responses to watch it and stuff. So it's that little service has been kind of a wonderful way I've found to get that little connection, make it with them. And I know that you have your own little kind of mom loves for them. So can you talk a little bit about what do you do for your girls? What's your mom love for them?
Right, and that's absolutely true. And I think it's a difference between enabling our kids to be unable to take care of themselves, where we do every little thing for them and swoop in and fix every single problem, and having established that they can do things for themselves, sometimes choosing to show love in active ways, to speak their love languages. So, for instance, my older daughter, who is right this minute in her college dorm room, she's perfectly capable of doing lots of things for herself, and does, of course. Her love language is not gifts, for instance. It's not what speaks love to her. It's not really how she speaks love. But acts of service are. So today, for instance, she moved over there last week, but she's coming back to our part of town. She doesn't go to school too far from home, and to teach dance. So I'll be able to see her. And she sent me a list last night. "I forgot these things. Can you round them up for me?" So after I'm done talking with you, I'm going to pull up her list and go and round up some sweaters and her dance tights and things like that. And I printed some stuff off for her this morning. So it's not she can't do those things. She could have come home and gotten them herself, but that will help her. And I guess I always just look at it as they're capable of doing things, lots of different things. But there are things that only they can do in their day. Many, many things. I can't be over going to school for my daughter. I can't be at my younger daughter's high school dealing with all the things she has to do every day. And so if I can do a few things for them that they could do for themselves, so they are more equipped or freed up or whatever to do the things they only can do, then to me that's just love, that's just family, that's just support. It's not making them lazy or anything like that. So, and the same thing with, I think you and I have talked about this, I think my younger daughter, the high schooler, her lunch every day. So she takes her lunch every day, and she even said to me last week when we were getting ready to start the new school year, I'm gonna start doing my own lunch. She said, you shouldn't have to pack my lunch for me, and it's not that I have to, I just have. And she said, I'm gonna start doing that. I'm like, okay, great. Let's talk about what we want to have on hand, and you can do that. And then the morning got underway, and she is very organized in the morning. She has a long list of what she wants to do. She gets up very early. She does devotions. She stretches because she's trying to improve as a dancer. She gets prepared for the day. She sets up her whole schedule for what she's got during school and after school, et cetera, et cetera. So she's got this whole clocked out thing that starts literally at 5 o'clock in the morning and goes for 2 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's crazy. We think she's insane, but she's very driven and focused. So I'm like, okay. So she got into all that, and then she said, could you go ahead and do my lunch for me? And I had time. It wasn't as if it was interrupting something else. It wasn't like, I wasn't making her a 6-course meal or anything like that. It was just
right.
Like, pretzels and peanut butter in the pack or whatever.
Right.
So I'm like, yes, I can do this for you. Because what she was doing instead was not, sitting around watching a YouTube video or whatever. She was, doing her devotions and trying to improve her center splits or something excruciating like that.
That does sound painful.
I can do this for you. And it won't be too many more years, and she'll be off and gone, and I won't be doing those things, and I think I'll look back, and I don't think I'll be sorry that I did them. I think I'll be glad that I did them.
Right, and I think that's the key, right? I mean, we think we only have our kids in our homes generally for 18 or so years.
Right.
And then they're off, and it's not like we can't still do small services for them. I mean, my mom is always putting stuff on my dresser when I come home, and stuff she saw for me. She's sending me things. We will never not be doing these things for our kids. But if we don't start that practice of when they're in our home, we won't have that connection. And so, I always smile when I see what my mom has done for me. It brings me that little joy. And I hope that, my girls will think that when they're off on their own, when they get a care package or something out of the mail, it won't be like, oh, great, Mom sent me something again. But it'll be a positive experience because we want to have that connection with our girls.
Yep.
And with our boys too, with our kids, we need that connection. I think we often think, it can get harder when they're teenagers because we can't really live in their world. One example is my girls are into Korean pop music. Cracks me up. I think it's hilarious. I mean, they just love it, and I'm fine with it because, compared to American pop, it's pretty clean.
Right, yeah.
And they can play it as much as they want in the house because it's mostly in Korean, and I can just tune it out. It's just kind of funny. So with that, I'm actually watching a K-drama with my oldest at her request.
Okay.
And when we finish this K-drama on the computer thing with subtitles. None of us understand Korean.
Okay, I thought maybe you'd take much. A second.
Yeah, I know. I'm like looking at it going, I don't know what's going on. No, there's subtitles in English, which is great. They've asked me to watch another one with them, and, I enjoy that. I mean, if it wasn't for them, I would never watch these shows.
Right.
Let's just be honest.
Right.
But I do it because it's that way we can connect with them that doesn't involve school, homework, or housework. All right. So any advice for parents or any ways that you keep that connection with your girls? Because I think it helps us when we have that stronger connection with them, helps us to ignore that typical teenage angst and drama, and there always is going to be that.
Right, definitely. And I love that word connection. I was thinking about that this morning. That's really what it's about, and I really feel like, I've heard people say sometimes, I wish I knew what the formula was for having teenagers who still want to be in a relationship. I wish I knew what the formula was to guarantee that when my kids are teenagers, they're still going to love me, they're still going to want to spend time with me. And there isn't any formula, and I always want to be careful to say that it's not that my husband and I have done all the right things and checked off all the right boxes and we plugged everything in and then out popped this wonderful teenager. We think our teenagers are wonderful. They're very normal. They're very typical, but they are really wonderful. And we enjoy them, which you don't often hear people say they enjoy their teenagers maybe. And so we didn't just do things a certain way and then end up with a guaranteed result. There's been lots of grace and we're very thankful, but I feel like the relationship that we have with them now, we have been building stone by stone or whatever all the way along and making those kinds of connections so that what we have now is not some radical thing we've never had before. It's a continuation of what we've been trying to build their whole lives. And we try to shift and accommodate their changes and their moods and all those hormones and that sort of thing. But it's mostly just being available for what is going to work for them. And just like you were talking with your daughters, and that was something that they're interested in, and so you're entering into their world, you're making that time for them. My younger daughter, one of the things she likes to do is we'll be in the car. We spend a lot of time in the car. She can't drive yet, so we're going back and forth between school and dance and band 100 times a week. And so we sometimes she'll say to me, do we need to talk about anything right now? Because if not, I have a song I want to play for you. Music is a huge part of her life. She loves to listen to lots of Christian worship music, and so she often will say, oh, I have a new song that I want you to hear. And when she says that, I am like, absolutely, I'm on board for that, and that's something that connects us. And then my older daughter, she would say, can we have a nighttime chat? That was one thing that we did when she was still living here in the evenings, and she would say, I'm ready for our nighttime chat, and she would store up stuff that she would want to talk about throughout the day. And she would even say to me, sometimes she'd even text me, I just thought of something. Don't let me forget to tell you this when we have our nighttime chat. I mean, she wouldn't say what it was. She would just say, remind me I have something to tell you. So she would kind of store things up throughout the day. And when she was ready to go to sleep, she would sit on her bed, and I'd sit on her bedroom floor, and she would just talk to me about, and it was, the full gamut. It could be anything, really. And that was absolutely sacred time. Nothing else needed to be happening then. And so now we're having to kind of do our nighttime chats via text. But in any case, so just looking for those opportunities and trying to be available to build those connections and feed that relationship, to kind of put the deposits in the relationship account. So when you're shifting into different seasons of your relationship, you've got something to make withdrawals from, I guess. And I'm definitely seeing that with my college daughter, because I feel like we're still close, even though our relationship is different now because of what she's doing and where she's living and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I love that idea of making deposits in our kids. So often we get caught up in the day-to-day. Right? And we're like, okay, you have to go to school, you have to do your homework, you have to do your chores, and if you play an instrument or a sport, you have to go to practice, you have to do this, ... And we can kind of get on that. That's our only communication and our only connection with our kids is either telling them what to do or shuffling them to the next thing. And yes, those things are important. We have to do those things. But we often forget that it's our job, too, is to, cut out pictures of dinosaur from the paper and show them to your dinosaur-loving son.
Right, exactly.
And we think that it has to be these grand gestures. I don't have an hour to sit with my kid. No, maybe some days you actually don't, because if you sat down, you would fall asleep because But we can look for those connections throughout the day. And like you said, okay, yeah, all right, I'm going to texting your girls are texting you about stuff, and you're like, okay, great, and if we can have a chat later, that's wonderful. But sometimes it's just, looking out for them and being available. And so when your daughter says, hey, I have a new song for you to play, you're not like, yeah, well, we need to talk about, you're like, yes, and you listen to that and you do that, because our kids, they matter more than, those relationships matter more than all this stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, it has been a pleasure talking with you, Elizabeth. I'm talking with Elizabeth Spencer at Guilty Chocoholic Mama. And I love that. I love that title. I know you love chocolate, and I'm like, you don't have to be guilty about it, Elizabeth. It's a great thing to love.
I'm not guilty about the chocolate. It kind of started a long time ago when I was feeling like there were so many, shoulds and do's and don'ts and that kind of thing for moms, and I was kind of like, oh, I feel guilty. I'm not measuring up to that, and so that's kind of where it came from. That's actually improved as I've become a mom. I feel not so guilty. I feel like, okay, people can do things their way. I'm doing things my way. And maybe it's because I'm at this stage where I have teenagers and I'm like, I've messed up a lot, and there's a lot of things I haven't done that maybe I was supposed to do. But gosh, they're pretty awesome, and I'm enjoying them. So, okay, so anyway.
Right, and I think that's the key, isn't it? I mean, the way I raise my girls are not the same way you're raising your girls, but we still have the same kind of underlying principles. We want our girls to grow up strong and happy and loving God and choosing the right things most of the time, like we choose the right things most of the time, and to have that connection with us so they can come to us when they have big problems, small problems, not really problems that they make into problems, all those kind of things. So, well, thank you so much for sharing with us today, Elizabeth. And you've been listening to You've Got This with Sarah Hammaker, and I hope you'll join us next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast of You've Got This with Sarah Hammaker. Sign up to receive notification of new podcasts and listen to previous editions at sarahhammaker.com. Until next time, remember, parenting might be hard sometimes, but don't worry, you've got this.